Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band podcast. I'm your host, Benedikt, and I'm here with my friend and co-host, Malcolm owen-flood. How are you, Malcolm?
Hello. Hey, Benny. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you. A little tired, but still good.
Yeah, me too. We we had daylight savings time, the time change over here in Canada, which you don't have in Germany, I guess.
Yes,
because every single time you do, is it a different day?
Yep, it is. Right. Like that again. I wasn't aware. Yeah, it is a different day. I wasn't aware that you already changed.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So this, listeners, this conversation between Benny and I happens every time. And what happens is the time change happens and I either show up early or late. Early, I guess. So I was there an hour early for our call today, and we scheduled this episode to happen early because of some scheduling stuff we both have today. And so I was just like, I was way too early. I was like an hour and a half early from our normal podcast time.
God, no! I had no idea.
No, okay. Well, that's all right. I had lots of coffee already, so we should be good. I just can't believe every time it happens, I don't think, I got to message Benny and make sure we're on the same page, or just look up the time in Germany on Google.
Yeah, same. And it's going to happen again soon when we switch back to,
I
think. In a couple of weeks, we'll be there again.
Time changes are the biggest threat to the podcast.
Yeah, totally. Oh, damn. Yeah, so we're both tired, which is good. I just realized the intro that the sentence that I always say in the beginning, I don't even think about this at this point anymore. I think you could just wake me up in the middle of the night and I could say that sentence like half asleep because it's just so automatic.
Yes, that one's built in.
Yeah, the question is just what happens after that. This is the question today. But we still prepared something for you. And speaking about being prepared, this episode is gonna hopefully help you prepare for your next recording session. We've done some stuff on pre-pro in the past. I think there's a whole episode where we talk about why you're missing out if you don't do pre-pro. Pre-pro stands for pre-production. And today in this episode, we're going to dive deeper into one specific reason for why you should do pre-production or record demos or whatever you want to call the process. But before we do that, I want to give you something else, or I want to tell you about something else that helps you prepare for the studio. You know that we always talk about how important it is to have brand new strings on your instruments and tune them well. And you know that by now, if you're following the podcast for a while, fresh strings it's kind of it's become a trademark in the community, I think. So anyway, we're big on that because out-of-tune guitars and old strings and all that is just something we come across all the time, and it's something that doesn't have to happen. It's not necessary. There are ways around that, and one of the ways around that is a course that I've launched. If you go to the selfrecordingband.com/guitar setup, you can get access to a guitar setup masterclass with Diego Casillas. Diego was our guest on the podcast in episode 47, I think. He is a really awesome guitar tech, a very cool dude to hang with, and he's worked with bands like Underoath, Chromeo, Smash Mouth, Buzzcocks, producers like Colin Britton. He's done really, really cool things. He's worked with bands live and in the studio, and he's helping them set their instruments up. He's setting intonation, setting the action, checking the neck relief, changing strings, all that. He's the guy when it comes to that sort of stuff. And he did a complete video masterclass for the Self-Recording Band that you can now get access to. It includes a 2-hour live workshop where he walks you through all the steps of setting up a guitar from scratch. And then there's 5 modules where he goes through how to choose the right strings and gauges, how to stretch the strings properly, how to check the neck relief, how to adjust the action, how to adjust the intonation, all that. You also learn how to even choosing the right tuner, cleaning and maintaining guitars, all that is in that masterclass. So if you go to the selfrecordingband.com/guitar setup, you can get access to that right now, and it's going to cost you less than the cost of one professional setup if you go to a professional for that. So might want to check that out, and then you'll be better prepared for your next guitar recording session.
Totally. I want to speak to this. Diego is incredible. He's the kind of person I actively seek out for years without finding. And when Benny introduced us, it was yes, I needed this resource. He's so damn knowledgeable and just knows the pro standard of like every guitar recording trick out there. And like I got an Evertune last year, and he was just so helpful in helping me get that set up. Just even online, like we don't live in the same place. We're, you know, actually not that far away. He's just in LA, I think. But it like just being able to get on a call with him and be like, what the hell's going on with this thing? He was like, oh, it's this, and this. And I was like, easy, done. And then like going into a record, we were, you know, doing some drop tuning stuff. And I was like, help me make sure my bass can go this low. And he was like, get these strings. And I was like, yes. Okay, great. That worked out awesome. He's the best. But if you get this course, not only are you learning from that guy, you're learning so that you can be equipped to handle these situations yourself from then on, which is pretty incredible. It's nice having these skills in your own chest of like tools, you know?
Yes, totally agreed. It's so valuable. And also, it was meant to be a bonus thing for our academy, like the flagship recording course that we have. And Diego did this workshop there for our people. It was meant to be a 1 hour workshop. We went over 2 hours and people just loved it. And then Diego just over-delivered and sent us these additional video modules because he just wanted to show people the whole thing, and he just didn't stop. And like we didn't ask for this. He just wanted to do that, and it was so great that we said like we have to put this into a sort of, we make this available for everybody, and like people really, really got a lot of value out of it. And I had no idea that this is going to be so amazing, but also so popular in our community. And yeah, Diego has been a great resource since then. He's also in our community answering questions there all the time, which I also think is really amazing. Like I've seen him make long comments in our Facebook group, answering people's questions. So he's just amazing. People love him. People love this workshop. And now he's back with a full course. So yeah, there's that. Do it.
Amazing. I do want to say I find it incredible that he just did this like on his own free will without us being like, hey, make us a course. He was just like, I'm just going to do it because I want to. Like Benny and I have both made courses, and it's a lot of work. It is so much work. And,
it is.
And just to do it and be like he just went for it. It's so amazing. That I kind of think that kind of shows what kind of person Diego is. And he's like an actionable person that can back up what he talks about. And wasn't afraid to show it. He was like, I'll make a video. It's great.
Exactly. Totally. All right. Let's jump into today's episode, though. This was your idea, Malcolm, and I think it's great because demoing and pre-production is an important thing to talk about in and of itself. But this specific aspect of it today is something that I have thought about a lot, but not in this way, really. But I think it's great we address it from that perspective. So can you give us a quick introduction of the what, why, and how and stuff, what we're going to do today?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So the two words that are going to get used a lot and are somewhat interchangeable is demoing, and pre-production. And it's funny thinking about that. In my head, they mean different things actually, but I think to different people, these words mean different things. And that's really what this episode is about, is pre-production or making demos meaning different things to different people. And there's actually many reasons to why you might want to do some pre-production on your album before you go and actually cut the real thing. And the idea of this episode is that we want to draw attention to those perks and different reasons you might decide to go do pre-production or demoing, to see if they might apply to you. It might kind of unlock like, oh, we hadn't been thinking about considering that. And it could change how you go about demoing. It could change how you go about making your actual album in the end. It can change everything, really. So funny enough, Benny and I, when we were kind of workshopping this idea, we were coming from different perspectives of why people make demos. And for me, a lot of it was just getting the song down so they can hear it, or making scratch tracks, right? I've definitely received a lot of demos, quotation marks. If you're watching on YouTube, there's the fingers making funny ears. Is like just a guitar and a vocal, and that's their demo, but they're a full band. And it's like, okay, well, I guess technically that's the song, right? But it's not really accomplishing a lot. So in that case, it's just like, hey, we made a demo and it's just a recording of the song. Or it's just, this guitar is a scratch track and the band's going to play to it. That's the primary reason for laying this down. But let's look at this from a different angle. And I think the first one, and probably the biggest one I want to draw attention to, is that you can treat demoing and pre-production as a test, an experiment to determine your recording style. Case in point would be that I've gone into the studio with a band that wanted to record live off the floor, everything, absolutely everything. And we went in, we set it all up. That takes a long time, by the way, setting up a full band. You're baffling off amps or setting them up in different rooms, running headphones to different places, different mixes to the whole band at once. It's really easy to blow a day on a good setup. And then we click play, and it was like almost instantly, I was like, this isn't going to work. We can't record the album like this. Like, they're just not tight enough. And it's, maybe we need to work on the monitoring more. Maybe we just need to have more time to run it. But essentially, if we'd done a pre-production run through of a live off the floor recording, we would have come to this determination much sooner. And, we could have done that with like one mic on the drum, one mic on an amp, one mic on a vocal, screw the backup vocals. We'll figure that out later. But like, you could have done a bare minimum live off the floor recording and figured out, is this band able to record live? Which is really hard, by the way. So that, like, doing a test with the how do we want to record in mind is going to really tell you a lot. Alternatively, if you record your demos by overdubbing one instrument at a time and it just doesn't sound like what you want, maybe you do need to be recording live, right? Maybe you're missing that looseness, essentially, is what's going to come of it. But there's like that looseness and gel and a little bit more dynamic tempo thing happening from a live recording. Like, this is something that just gets skipped over because people assume they're going to do it one way or the other. But without actually doing it, you don't know if it's going to work. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Like, I feel you should just keep going because like you're on a roll there. Like, do it. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other one that's really common for bands I've worked with is the desire to record live bed tracks. So like at least drums and bass together, if not one guitar maybe, or keys or something. And then overdubbing, extra guitars and getting that like stereo doubled guitars thing going and then overdubbing vocals, which this is if you're a tight band, this is like such a time saver. And you can have the rest of the band set up to be workshopping the songs as you're going with the intention of only keeping drums and bass maybe kind of thing. And if you're tight enough to pull that off, that's fantastic. It's kind of the best of both worlds. But again, gone into this recording situations with this intent and figured out, okay, like the drummer and the bass player aren't really on the same page. So this isn't going to work. We're going to have to record the bass to the drums so that we can change his parts to sync up better with the drummer or play tighter or whatever. And maybe you might think, okay, well, that's no big deal. You'll just redo the bass as well. Let's just keep going with the bed tracks thing. But if they're not tight now, they're actually probably causing the other person to play less tight, right? Like they're getting in the way of each other. So that's just something you can't learn, again, without setting up and trying to record that way. You have to give it a shot first. One more thing to add that I should have mentioned at the beginning, and this was an important clarification that Benny pointed out before we started this episode, is that all demoing and pre-production should be recorded with the total possibility and likelihood that it will be thrown away. So awesome if you can keep it and use it in the final album, but assume that you're going to have to redo it, even if you're trying not to. Like, it's this hard line to straddle because, we want you to nail it. And if you get it, it's like so cool and awesome that you just got it in one try. You're saving a bunch of time and stuff. But really, that's not the reason we're doing that. That is the lowest on the priority list, is getting a keeper thing that we can use in the final album. It's all about everything else.
Yeah, totally. I even go as far as, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people, bands that I'm mixing for or artists that I'm coaching, where I even separate it further. And you sort of do the same. You said demo and pre-pro are sort of two different things for you. So for me, it's also the first phase is where we focus on the song and we don't even care about like any technical things. We just worry about like if the song is good enough, what's the chord progression, what's the melody, then how do we go from that very basic thing to something that's fully arranged in a full song. And then we don't care about the quality of the recording at this point. Could be a phone recording. And then once we have a song, we go to the actual, like we go away from the demo process sort of to the pre-pro process where we prepare for the actual recording. So these are 2 steps. And then still, like, we have recorded the demos and then we record the pre-pro, and none of them are supposed to be keepers. So we're actually recording twice and throwing it away, which is confusing to people because they are like, well, I've started with this idea and then I added another thing. And now I'm like, I already started kind of mixing it and now I want to finish it. So why would I want to start over again? And I'm a big fan of like having separate steps, and because it's also a different mindset. Like, you shouldn't be worried about like tweaking the EQ or the compressor when you're actually focusing on, is the chorus like good enough? Does it connect? How does it feel? Or when you're trying to figure out what you need on your monitors, or if you need a click or not, or if you want to play live or not, or which room you're going to use, or technical things you need to prepare for the session. You probably shouldn't go back and try to rearrange the song while you're doing that, or you shouldn't think ahead and try to pick the right whatever reverb or something. These are distinct, separate processes to me, and I feel like you should go deeper in each phase and not like broad and do everything at the same time. So yeah, it's not about capturing something that you use on the final recording. Sometimes though it can happen. So I mean, sometimes magic happens while you're recording demos or pre-pro, and if that's the case, fine, but it's not the goal, and it's totally normal to record something just for demo purposes and then just for pre-pro purposes and then just throwing it away, and then you go into the actual session, and that's the goal of this all. If you go into the actual session, the song is ready, you know what you want to record and how you want it to sound and who's going to do what and what you want to hear on your monitors and like all these things. You go into the session and all you focus on is like performance. You focus on delivering the best possible take because everything else has already been taken care of. That's the whole reason behind this. And I'm glad we're doing this episode today because you're right, Malcolm, that it's different for different people. Some people skip the first part and only do the technical preparation and they don't really refine the song. Other people work on the song a lot and maybe even record and demo it, but then they skip the technical part and then they are stuck in the session trying to figure out all these things that they should have figured out before. So, and that's why we do this episode today. Both of those things should be addressed before the actual session. And then when you go into the studio or in your own studio, you're prepared. And you should treat your own recording session, I feel like you should treat that like you've booked an expensive external studio, because what happens there is you gotta be prepared, because otherwise it's going to be a waste of everybody's time and money. And it could even happen, and I've done that in the past, that the producer or engineer is going to send you home and say like prepare and then come back, because this is just a waste, Right. So you should treat your session like that, I think. And that includes all the technical things that Malcolm started to talk about in this episode. So do you want to record live or not? You want to, hear a click? Who needs to hear the click? Do you need any scratch tracks? Do you like all these things? This is testing the recording style. This is part of pre-production.
Totally, yeah, like the click. That's a great one. Often beginner bands want to record without a click, and experienced bands do this occasionally too. So it's not it's not wrong to record without a click, but often people are trying to do it for the wrong reason. So that mistake classically gets found out after a band does it and releases it, and they're like, "Wow, that's pretty loose." It's like, yeah. You didn't record to a click, obviously, and you're not very tight. This is the problem. Should have been found out in the pre-production testing period of like, let's see how it sounds when we record to a click versus not to a click. Let's A/B these, right? Sonically, there's also huge advantages. So actually, back it up. Back in the day, before anybody had home studios, bands would they would still record demos, throwaway demos. They would go into the studio and record demos, and then end up going and recutting them for their final masters. So now you don't have to book a studio to do this, which is amazing. You don't have to book a studio to do either step now, which if you have, what we're talking about in this entire podcast. And that's really cool, but you still want to kind of have that stage. And now from a sonic standpoint, if you're recording with your own gear, you have to find out if your gear can actually achieve what you want. Right? So if you want this larger than life, I don't know. I can't even think. This is the daily savings time hitting me. But essentially, you have to record your song with what you have, and then if whatever doesn't sound like you want it to, not exactly. We're talking big picture, but like if if you only have electronic drums and you want a very natural drum sound, you have to address that now. And now you've done the test to see what's possible with your available drum sounds, right? And if that doesn't fit what you're aiming for, you now know, okay, we're going to have to cut drums in a different space. We're going to have to rent mics and do a live drum kit, or hire a remote studio drummer, something like that. You've now exhausted what you have and know what you have to change. Maybe you're like, my Fender Strat just does not sound like a Les Paul, so we're going to have to get a Les Paul and recut the guitars. All of that stuff is going to really inform how the recording turns out when you do the real thing.
Yes, totally. And the important part of this is also you have to try, and you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to be willing to try and willing to accept that maybe what happens is not what you want it to happen. So maybe you think our room is gonna be fine, and it's like we'll get it to work here, and we don't want to go somewhere else. It's just a hassle, and we don't want to do that. But maybe you're just wanting to maybe you just want to go the easy way, and you don't want to compare, and you don't want to admit that it would actually be better to go to a bigger room. Or maybe you think the guitar you have is fine, and you, instead of borrowing another one and trying and really comparing, you just talk yourself into using the one that you have, because you don't, you already made that decision before even comparing, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. So it takes, you gotta be honest with yourself, and you gotta do the experiment, and then you gotta do what's right for the record, even if that's the uncomfortable option. That includes things like we always, like there can't be an episode without it, but we always talk about it. So fresh strings. It could be that you think the strings you have on your guitar are good, and you've just changed them 2 weeks ago or whatever, and then you think you'll be fine. But maybe do the comparison. Maybe just change them once so that you see what the difference is. And then if you're really honest, you'll notice that the new ones sound better, and then you have to use them, right? But if you don't even compare, if you don't use pre-pro to test these things, you'll be tricking yourself into thinking that it's going to be fine and you don't even know what it would sound like if you did the experiment.
Right.
I had this today.
Absolutely.
I got an email today from from an artist that I'm mixing for, who hired a bunch of really awesome musicians for his next album that I'm mixing. So he's a solo artist, but he's hiring musicians. And one of them is a bass player, and I won't mention any names here, but he's a bass player, and I know that person, and he's really great. He's an amazing bass player. Really, really good. I've mixed for his bands live back when I did live sound also, and great bands, great dude, great bass player. And I was really surprised to read what I read today, because the artist I'm mixing sent me an email saying that the bass player said he doesn't want to change strings, because I think in my checklist it says, like, please use fresh strings. And he says he doesn't want to put on new strings, and I don't know what to do now, because he's a professional and he's really great, and I think he knows what he's doing, but you keep telling me that fresh strings are better, so what should I do? And it honestly was kind of tough for me, because I thought, well, that guy is really good, and I've heard records he's played on and it sounds good, so I'm kind of hesitant to tell him what to do, sort of. But at the same time, I just know that even this guy would sound better probably with new strings. And the reason I bring it up is the easy way to figure that out is you do pre-pro, you compare it, and then you'll see if for that specific song or record in that context, is it better to use new strings or the ones he has on his bass? So that way we don't have to make a decision based on what we think is right. We can just hear it and then say, that sounds better. And I'm the first one to admit, if his old strings sound better with the way he plays and the song and everything, and if he's right, then I'm the first one to say, let's go with the old strings. But I want to hear it. I want to do that, that extra step and do the comparison, do proper pre-pro, because I don't want to go into a session thinking that what we did is maybe right, but I want to know that this is the right decision. And that's what pre-pro is for. So it's very easy to just do the test and then say, okay, this actually sounds better. We all have to admit it. Let's go.
Yeah. This is, again, I think most people listening to this don't think they're doing pre-production to discover problems, right? They just think they're doing pre-pro to lay down the song. And the drawing attention to the problems that in your setup is so crucial. You might find that your vocals sound like an echo chamber because you've been using your shower to record vocals or something. It's like, oh, this isn't working. Now we have to pivot. We have to change. Or maybe, that could inform mic choice. It could inform anything and everything, really. So just a a benefit that's hugely helpful and shouldn't be overlooked to why you should be doing proper demoing and pre-production. The third one on our list is a fun one that, again, totally gets overlooked. And it is that doing proper pre-production and demoing puts your bandmates on pretty much like on the testing grounds. It's like, can they actually perform these parts to the level we need? And there's nothing more valuable than this. Because if your bandmates can't do it, you have to find somebody that can. Or you have to find a heck of an engineer.
Yeah.
And really, that's not the right solution. You want to find somebody that can play it. So, yeah, speaking from my own experience, and Benny, I'm sure you've had this too. Band shows up, they haven't done any real demoing or pre-production, so they just assume that everybody can shred the parts, and then the whole thing falls apart. Drummer can't play to a click track. Bass player can play to a click track, but not to the drums. I don't know. Guitarist is just horribly out of tune anytime they play a bar chord or something. Like they just can't fret a bar chord in tune. And going back to gear, maybe the guitarist gear is just not intonated. There's this huge opportunity to find out that you've got a problem that will literally destroy your recording before you go into the real thing, and invest time and money. Or really those are the two things you're spending. It's funny when I say this stuff, I keep kind of like in my head, it's like before you go spend time and money in buying a recording or renting a recording space to like cut an album or paying a producer or something. But it's the same thing with your own time. You're still spending everybody's time and money with doing it at your own space. So just like you want to discover these things as soon as you can. And it's much better, I think you'd all agree, for your band's ego if you find out early and then tell your drummer, for example, picking on drummers today, if you then were to tell your drummer, hey, you've got to practice to a click before we can cut this song. Like we have to fix this and let's do it now and give you some time. Whereas if it happens on the day, again, using the actual like studio session as an example, might have to fire the drummer, or might have to program it or just do all sorts of wizardry that ends up really upsetting that drummer. I've had, I don't know if I've had, but I've heard of people quitting the band after a session because like they didn't feel valued, but in reality they couldn't play the part. So it's not the situation you want. You all want to be friends and having fun. So you have to address these issues in advance.
Yep.
And the only way to do that is by finding out. You have to find out.
Absolutely, totally. You have to find out. You have to try. So, quick recap is like the recording style is number one that we had here. Like, do you want to record live or not? Testing tone approaches is number two. Like, which gear you want to use? Does the gear you have give you the result you're looking for? If not, what needs to be done to achieve it? And then testing your band's ability, which includes people being able to play their parts or being able to play a click. And that can just mean you don't have to fire people. You can just like practice more and like come up with a different schedule and be like, okay, we need to simplify these songs, or we need to practice more. We need to rearrange things. That there's always a solution usually. And it's all about doing these tests before when there's no pressure and not a stressful like studio situation. And even though you're recording yourself, you might think like that's not a stressful situation, but it can still be. It's still, as you said, Malcolm, a waste of everybody's time. And also, the most important thing to me is you want to be able to focus on the performance, on the task at hand, which is deliver the best possible take. And that's why you should be addressing all the other stuff before the session. So what else can we say about this? Like, I'm interested in one thing that I wanted to ask you when it comes to testing tone approaches. So trying out different gear or seeing if the gear you have will do the job is one thing, but also do you go as far as like trying different mic positions or miking techniques or like more specific recording techniques during pre-pro, or do you do all of that in the actual recording session or like the day before or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of split down the middle on that. It certainly couldn't hurt. I think I'm more prone to the idea of using dependable baseline strategies. So, for example, just like being like, if I record a DI and use a great like neural DSP amp sim, the guitar tone is going to be pretty solid. we're going to have a good demo and it's going to sound great. As long as that solution gets you in the ballpark of what you're aiming for, So if you need a 5150 sounding guitar tone, which is quite a sound, and whatever plugin you have doesn't have that, that's not a good idea. I think you then need to, you need to find a 5150 or something that sounds like it, right? So always within the ballpark, but not necessarily the thing. But if there was, some people kind of do geek out on this. They're like, I need my drums to be in like, what's that Led Zeppelin setup called?
Bonham. Not Bonham's drummer, the Glenn Johns.
Yeah. The Glenn Johns, the Glenn Johns miking technique. And it's like, okay, that sounds cool. It doesn't sound like the modern rock album that I'm here. You guys sound like Nickelback when you write your songs, so that seems odd that you want that, but let's try it. And then you'll discover that maybe it's not, right? That happens all the time. People get an idea in their head, and the easiest way to convince them otherwise is to show them. If you can, right? And maybe they're totally right. I'm such a snarky guy sometimes, but they could be totally right.
Same here. Totally.
I don't know why my Monday attitude's like, no, you're wrong. There's no reason to say that.
There is a theme.
Glenn Johns is awesome. It's totally awesome.
Yeah, but there is some. I mean, I think we spotted patterns there over the years where people it's not their fault in a way. Like they just don't know, and so they see something online in a video, or they hear something on a podcast, might be ours, and they hear something, or somebody tells them about something, or they read that their favorite artist or engineer did something, and then they want to try that themselves because it's interesting to them. It's something new. It's maybe somebody used it that they admire, and they can't see why that wouldn't work in their situation. And I mean, musicians are not professional producers or engineers, so how could they know? And then that idea, sort of, they have that in their minds, and they think it's great for every situation or for their record. And until you try it and compare it with another method, there's no way you can tell, right? So
right.
I think that's just a thing that keeps happening. So sometimes they are right, sometimes it is a really great idea, even though it's unconventional. But oftentimes it's just something you read, and I did that in the past as well. Like you read something, you get really excited about it, you think that's the game changer, that's going to change the way your recordings sound forever, and then you try it, and then you wonder why things don't sound better, and then you keep coming back to the same things for certain situations. That's just a process that's totally normal. But important is that you always compare and experiment and try, and then decide and do an honest, like the ideal situation would be a blind test, even where you don't know what the options are, and then just pick the one that works better. So
yeah. And it's funny thinking about this. The opposite could be argued to what I said, where I'm like, play it safe. For guitars, use a DI and an amp sim. You're going to get something really solid that's usable and like editable and salvageable, and I think probably has the biggest chance to getting used in the final production. Again, that's not our priority. But on the flip side, what a great opportunity to experiment and throw the kitchen sink at it and be like, what happens if I run my bass into a guitar amp with a splitter? What happens, right? And then you find like these little magic tricks, and most of the time those things will not work, but every once in a while they do. And that has happened where a band has come in and been like, this is the sound. Like let me just trust me. I'm going to set it up like this. And you're going to record it like it already sounds like it on the demo in this case, but we're just going to play it better. And I know how to get there already. It's a cocked wallet into this fuzz pedal with my tone rolled off, and it's like, dang, that sounds exactly like what you said it would. Perfect. And that experimenting, that pre-production led us there. So it's kind of it goes both ways. Yeah, there's no right or wrong answer. It depends what you're trying to get. Are you trying to find like tone hunts ahead of the actual session, or are you trying to get the song down and figure out musical ability and structure and stuff like that? I guess it really depends on the specific circumstances of who's doing the pre-production. Yeah.
I think when it comes to these tone decisions, my approach is to like very drastic decisions, or like things that are going to make a huge difference and are going to be time consuming to try. I do those things during pre-pro just because there's no pressure and because I want to get the recording session done, right? I want to record the song. So when I get to actually record the song, I will make sure that we actually record the song. And if I do these big decisions that are time consuming and that require a lot of experimentation, if I do those in the actual session, we might not even finish the thing, and that's not what I want. So I do these before in pre-pro, but I still do some things in the recording session. So for example, I might shoot out 5 different kick drum mics during pre-pro until I know, or I might come up with a plan and I already think I know what's going to work. So that I know going into the session what the kick drum sound that we're going for, what that actually sounds like, and I have sort of a way that I can get this, and that might include like shooting out a couple of mics. But in the session, I might still change the exact position. I might still refine that, or I might use a different angle, or I might add a second mic if I feel like it's not the complete thing that I want. So things like that, or I might change, things like that. So I know going in what the sound is that I want to achieve, and I have a plan for that I know works. But I might tweak it a little bit in the session if I feel like that day, I don't know, something needs to be added, or it's not quite there yet, or
right.
So I don't do the whole engineering thing during pre-pro. I think that's also a waste of time. But the big decisions, I make those beforehand. It's similar to, I think of it as like, I just want to make sure that the session is going to happen and that we're able to finish it. It's similar to when I think of running. It's the sports analogy there. When I do a long distance run, I can experiment with nutrition and stuff like that during training, and I have a lot of time and no pressure. And if I feel sick because I tried something new, then it's not the end of the world. It's just a practice day, But I absolutely don't want to experiment with my nutrition on race day, because that might mean I don't finish the race if things go wrong. So I might decide to take in a little more, or a little less. That's not the end of the world, but I don't decide the general approach on race day. I do that before, and then I can go into the race
chocolate
relaxed.
Milk.
And
I'm going to try chocolate milk for the race day here. Just a 2-liter chocolate milk.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way. Yeah, exactly. So similar to that, I just want to make sure we finish the race, or we finish the session, we get things done. We can tweak it a little bit, and there's always room for like spontaneous creative things and stuff. But the big decisions, I want to sort of make those before. I at least want to know what we're trying to do, basically. I don't want to start from scratch. I don't want to decide on the day if I'm going to use room mics or not, or if I'm going to put them, there's always room for experimentation. But I think that's how you can... how I would approach it. And it's a little different even in your situation as a self-recording band. I always think of it from my producer's perspective, but as a self-recording band, that's so easy and cool to do, because you're likely doing pre-pro in the same room, in the same spot that you're doing the actual session in. So if the room is right and you decided that is the way to go, then you can go pretty far during pre-pro without the pressure, and you can experiment, and then you can do that in what you come up with in pre-pro. You can do that in the recording session, so you don't have to recreate that at a different studio. But yeah, you can do pretty much all the prep work and then really only focus on the performance, which is a big advantage. Because if you do that in separate rooms, if you do pre-pro your own in your jam space, and then you go to a studio to record, not all of the things that you came up with in your experimenting might be applicable in that other room or with their gear or whatever. But you have that same situation. It's the luxury that big bands have when they rent a studio for weeks or months to do writing, pre-pro, and the recording in the same building. You have that in your jam space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a huge advantage, and totally. Yeah, every little trick you learn is totally recreatable down the road, because you're not going anywhere. It's all living where you are. So that's totally awesome. Yeah, I think this is maybe switching off our topic a little too much, but I'm going to say it anyways, because I feel like it really is a good mindset hack to have for if you want to be experimenting. And Benny and I, both being professional audio guys for years, if you want to be good at your job, you learn the fundamentals and you get really good at them. But you get really bored if that's all you do. and luckily, though, that is the best way to experiment, is like get your fundamentals down, and then also, in addition, have these weird experiments running at the same time. I'm not going to risk throwing like that base example of throwing something out to a guitar amp and splitting it in the octave pedal or something crazy like that. I'm not going to bet all of my whole bass sound on that weird experiment that we're trying, which is probably going to sound phasey and terrible and not like Royal Blood. Everybody that thinks that's going to sound like Royal Blood. What I'm going to do is have that and experiment and try and get something really cool. Hell yeah. but there's also going to be that DI. There's also going to be that traditional bass capture. With the drum kit, I'm not going to just throw away my overheads because there happens to be cymbals in some weird mono room in a different room in the building. You have to still make sure all of the check marks are ticked and then experiment. And if that experiment pays off, really cool. But if it doesn't, it's no sweat. You can just delete the track or hide it or whatever. But getting those fundamentals down, then experimenting, totally essential, I think. Same goes for vocals.
Yeah.
All right. Now, are we off topic enough that we should wrap this episode up?
No, I'm processing all these things. As I said before, I had a coaching call before recording this episode, and then before that, I was we were just preparing another amazing resource for you all, a mixing course that's I think we can say that will be out soon, or maybe it is already out by the time you hear this episode. But so there was a lot to process and a lot of talking and teaching today. So it takes me a while to follow all the things you say, but I'm totally with you. And yeah, I think we should wrap it up because I think we got the main point across.
Yeah, totally. I don't know if anybody's noticed my voice cracking up on this episode, but it's because of making that course that Benny just mentioned. I was talking so much for so many hours straight that my voice still hasn't recovered from it.
Yep. True. I feel that. Okay, so you know what? Let us know how you approach this typically, because we're always interested in hearing what you do as a self-recording band, because everybody's approach is different, and maybe you need a completely different process or approach in order to be creative, or I don't know, maybe you come up with something that works for your band. Let us know about that. If you go to the selfrecordingband.com/community, you can join our community on Facebook, and there will be a discussion thread for this episode as always, or most of the time. Sometimes I forget, but usually there will be one. And then, or if not, you can just create your own. And then let's discuss this, because I always love to hear new approaches, and I'm very open for different ways if that is something that works for you. That's just our perspective from having worked with a lot of bands and from how you typically do it in the studio, and also from being in our own bands where we did this. But again, sometimes I hear new things, new approaches from people where I'm like, interesting, that could work. So let us know, share that, go to the selfrecordingband.com/community and tell us about your demoing and pre-pro process. And also let us know if you have any questions about the technical part, because this episode is really about not the writing and arranging, but the technical part of it, like the preparing for the session. So if you have any questions on that, specific questions, things you're struggling with, post it in the community there and somebody will jump in and help you. If not, we'll do it, or maybe we'll answer it on an episode. Anyway, let's talk there. Let's discuss.
Yeah. Okay. You made me think of one more thing we have to mention.
I knew it.
Sorry,
I had a feeling.
You thought you were free. But one more reason that you should be thinking about doing pre-production and demoing that you might not be considering is to find how you like to demo and do pre-production. Once you find the process that clicks for your band, it's like you've discovered magic in fire in a bottle, or whatever that saying is. I can't remember I have no idea what that saying is right now. It's magic in a bottle, lightning in a bottle. That's it.
Fire in a bottle.
Why is it lightning in a bottle though? Why would you want that? Anyways, it really is. I remember with my band of Rascals, we went and did pre-pro at a studio. In our case, I had the luxury of having access to studios. And, we all had our own headphone set up. We could all record everything multi-track and demo in real time. Be like, oh, let's try building into the chorus. Just play it. We're just rolling. And then we just left with the song updated, multi-track to a click all the time. It was so awesome, so easy for us to immediately hear what we needed to hear in real-time feedback. That for us, that was the ultimate pre-production method. For other people, it's a one person with their laptop and virtual instruments and a DI, and they just can create pretty much an entire album with that. And it's totally dependent on you and your team and how you communicate best and what gives you the best results. So don't rule out that advantage of doing pre-production, and that being a reason why you should experiment with pre-production too. You maybe just haven't found your winning solution yet, your winning mixture of processes that really lands you on what you need to create magical music.
Yep. What was it? The flash in the pan? No, the lightning. The
flash
fire
in the pan, magic
no.
in a bottle.
Yeah, yeah. I totally agree. I think that there's value in just discovering that, like that process. Totally agreed.
Awesome. Okay, let's wrap this up. I know we were meant to be done earlier, but
that's totally cool. Yeah, no, that's totally cool. So Thomas will hopefully make this a little shorter anyways for you guys. But I think this is an important episode, and I think there will be more on that topic, not on the technical, but on the other aspects of pre-pro, because preparation is so important. All right, have a good one. Thank you so much for listening, and talk to you next week.
Thanks. Bye.